The golden age of Hollywood, roughly from the 1920s through the early 1960s, cultivated a public image of glamour, poise, and class for its stars. However, many actresses behind the scenes had bold, unfiltered personalities that contrasted sharply with their polished screen personas. Vulgar in this context usually refers to being brash, foul-mouthed, sexually frank, or delightfully scandalous, rather than tasteless or crude in a mean-spirited way. Here are some Golden Age Hollywood actresses known for their vulgarity or wild behavior behind the scenes. Tallulah Bankhead was one of Golden Age Hollywood's most outrageous personalities. A Southern belle turned scandalous star, she was openly bisexual, notoriously foul-mouthed, and delightfully unfiltered. Unlike many of her contemporaries who protected a polished public image, Tallulah reveled in shocking polite society. She once famously quipped, "My father warned me about men and booze, but he never mentioned a word about women and cocaine." Her life was a whirlwind of affairs, wild parties, and razor-sharp wit. Bankhead was also known for her deep, smoky voice and magnetic screen presence, though her off-screen antics often overshadowed her talent. She smoked constantly, drank heavily, and cursed freely, often shocking even the most seasoned industry veterans. Despite, or because of, her wildness, she was beloved by many for her charisma, courage, and unapologetic authenticity. She defied Hollywood norms with her sexual openness and bold personality, becoming a legendary figure whose legacy remains far more colorful than the roles she played. In a world of conformity, Tallulah Bankhead was gloriously, vulgarly herself. Bette Davis was one of Hollywood's most iconic actresses, and one of its most outspoken. Known for her fierce independence and sharp tongue, Davis never hesitated to speak her mind, often in brutally blunt or profane terms. Behind her poised screen persona was a woman who cursed like a sailor, clashed with studio heads, and took pride in never sugarcoating the truth. She broke molds not only with her acting but with her personality, defying the submissive, polished image expected of women in the industry. Her legendary feud with Joan Crawford was full of barbs and venom, often played out publicly. Davis once said of Crawford, "She slept with every male star at MGM except Lassie." That quote captures both her wit and her vulgarity. Despite, or perhaps because of, her abrasiveness, Davis was deeply respected. She won 2 Academy Awards and racked up 10 nominations, all while battling sexism, ageism, and industry politics. Her boldness and defiant spirit set her apart. Bette Davis wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature who swore, smoked, and fought her way to the top. Joan Blondell was a standout star of pre-code Hollywood, known for playing fast-talking, wisecracking women with charm, sass, and plenty of attitude. Off-screen, she wasn't much different. With a sharp wit, a bawdy sense of humor, and a fearless mouth, Blondell often shocked the more conservative figures in the industry. She was tough, street-smart, and didn't hesitate to speak her mind, qualities that, in her time, could easily be labeled as vulgar for a woman. In an era when female stars were expected to be demure and polished, Blondell's brassy honesty made her unforgettable. She cursed, drank, and joked with the guys, often outshining them in both style and delivery. Her early roles in the 1930s, before the Hays Code cleaned up Hollywood's act, reflected this persona. Portraying her as the sexy, no-nonsense girl who always got the last word. While she never courted scandal the way others did, her earthy humor and real-life grit made her stand out. Joan Blondell wasn't just a pretty face, she was raw, bold, and brilliantly vulgar in all the best ways. Marlene Dietrich was the epitome of cool elegance on screen, but behind the scenes, she was famously vulgar, fiercely independent, and unapologetically herself. Known for her deep voice and sultry gaze, Dietrich also had a razor-sharp tongue and a wicked sense of humor. She swore frequently, smoked constantly, and was anything but the refined lady Hollywood tried to package her as. Her off-screen persona was bold, blunt, and brazen, qualities that made her legendary among those who knew her personally. Openly bisexual in an era of deep conservatism, Dietrich carried on affairs with both men and women, including high-profile names like Gary Cooper and Mercedes da Acosta. She embraced her sexuality with a freedom that scandalized polite society but thrilled her peers. Her sense of style, often wearing men's suits and tuxedos, only added to her androgynous mystique and defiance of gender norms. Despite her glamorous image, she preferred dirty jokes, strong drinks, and total honesty. Marlene Dietrich didn't just push boundaries, she ignored them entirely. Vulgar, magnetic, and unforgettable, she was truly one of Hollywood's most defiant icons. Judy Garland, beloved for her role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, had a far more complex and raw persona offstage, especially later in life. As she grew older and moved beyond the tight control of MGM, Garland's stage presence became brutally honest, emotionally raw, and often laced with vulgar humor. Her personal struggles with addiction, mental health, and the relentless pressures of fame left her with little patience for Hollywood's polished facades. In her concerts and interviews, Garland was known to curse, tell risque jokes, and openly mock the industry that had both made and broken her. Audiences adored her candor. She was self-deprecating, bitingly funny, and often heartbreaking in the same breath. Her humor could turn dark, and she wasn't afraid to call out former colleagues, ex-husbands, or the studio system that exploited her. Judy's unfiltered honesty, including her occasional profanity, became part of her legend. No longer the wide-eyed girl from Kansas, she evolved into a woman who used vulgarity not for shock, but as a weapon of survival, rebellion, and truth in a world that demanded silence. Ava Gardner was the definition of Hollywood glamour on screen, sultry, elegant, and mesmerizing. But off-screen, she was famously wild, fiercely independent, and unapologetically vulgar. Known for her heavy drinking, sharp wit, and fiery temper, Gardner swore like a sailor and had no patience for pretension. She grew up poor in North Carolina, and despite becoming one of MGM's biggest stars, she never let fame make her polite or predictable. Her personal life was as fiery as her personality. She had stormy, passionate relationships, most famously with Frank Sinatra, whom she once dismissed with the biting remark, "He's just a little guy trying to be a big man." Ava's honesty could be brutal. And she often used profanity to cut through Hollywood's nonsense. She drank hard, partied harder, and lived life entirely on her own terms. Though she often played seductive, mysterious women, the real Ava was even more captivating, raw, outspoken, and full of life. Her vulgarity wasn't for shock, it was her armor, her freedom, and a sign that she never let anyone tame her. Ava Gardner was beauty with bite. Shelley Winters was a powerhouse both on and off the screen, loud, brash, unapologetically vulgar, and proud of it. A two-time Academy Award winner, she had little patience for Hollywood pretension and delighted in telling wild, raunchy stories, especially about her numerous affairs with famous men like Marlon Brando, Sean Connery, and Errol Flynn. Shelley wasn't just outspoken, she was a force of nature, unafraid to swear, laugh too loud, or speak her mind in any situation. One of her most infamous moments came when she dumped her Oscar into a soup tureen at a formal dinner, fed up with the snobbery around her. That moment summed her up perfectly. She valued authenticity over status and never let decorum get in the way of honesty or fun. Winters was open about her sexuality, her struggles, and her contempt for hypocrisy in Hollywood. While many actresses of her era carefully crafted demure public images, Shelley reveled in being messy, real, and larger than life. Her vulgarity wasn't offensive, it was part of her power, her humor, and her fearless approach to life. Thelma Ritter was a scene-stealing character actress known for her sharp tongue, dry wit, and down-to-earth presence. On screen, she often played maids, nurses, or working-class women with no time for nonsense, and off-screen, she wasn't much different. A native New Yorker, Ritter brought a tough, no-frills attitude to Hollywood, and her Bronx bluntness made her both beloved and occasionally feared. Her sense of humor was bawdy, often laced with sarcasm and delivered with perfect timing. While other actresses courted glamour, Thelma leaned into grit and realism. She didn't pretend to be refined or dainty. She was famously quick with a dirty joke and wasn't afraid to swear or cut through pretense with a single line. Directors loved her for her professionalism, actors respected her for her honesty. Though never a leading lady, she was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, more than many glamorous stars of her era. Thelma Ritter's vulgarity wasn't about shock, it was about truth, humor, and heart. She brought authenticity to an industry obsessed with illusion, and her unfiltered charm remains one of the great delights of classic Hollywood. Rosalind Russell was the queen of rapid-fire dialogue and razor-sharp wit, best known for her role as the fast-talking reporter Hildy Johnson in His Girl Friday. But Russell wasn't just acting, her off-screen personality mirrored her on-screen brilliance. She was famously quick-witted, sarcastic, and unafraid to speak her mind in blunt, sometimes borderline vulgar terms, especially in an industry that expected women to be demure and delicate. Though she played sophisticated, professional women, Rosalind was known behind the scenes for cracking body jokes, poking fun at pompous studio heads, and tossing off zingers that could flatten anyone in the room. She was a master of the double entendre and could go toe-to-toe with any man in terms of sharp humor and bold commentary. Her confidence and irreverence made her a favorite among peers, even if it occasionally raised eyebrows. Russell defied the stereotype of the ladylike star and embraced a more authentic, unfiltered identity. She didn't rely on shock value, but her frankness and biting humor, often laced with just enough vulgarity, made her one of the most refreshingly real women in classic Hollywood. Barbara Stanwyck was one of Golden Age Hollywood's toughest, most respected actresses, both on and off the screen. Known for her commanding presence in films like Double Indemnity and The Lady Eve, Stanwyck brought that same strength to her real life. She cursed freely, drank with the boys, and didn't give a damn about Hollywood's moral expectations. While other actresses cultivated carefully polished images, Stanwyck kept things blunt, gritty, and real. Raised in poverty and orphaned at a young age, she developed a survival instinct early, and it showed in her no-nonsense attitude. She had little patience for phoniness and rarely played by the rules. Off-set, she was known to throw around profanity with the ease of a seasoned sailor and matched her male co-stars drink for drink and joke for joke. Though she rarely discussed her personal life, rumors swirled for decades about her sexuality, relationships, and fierce independence. What made Stanwyck remarkable wasn't just her talent, it was her refusal to play a role off camera. She lived on her own terms, and if that meant being called vulgar, she wore it like armor. Jean Harlow, the original blonde bombshell, took 1930s Hollywood by storm with her platinum hair, sultry charm, and bold attitude. But while studios marketed her as sexy and glamorous, Harlow herself was cheeky, brash, and refreshingly vulgar behind the scenes. She often poked fun at her own sex symbol status, cracking risque jokes and mocking Hollywood's obsession with image and decorum. Her humor was bawdy, playful, and well ahead of its time. She could deliver a double entendre with a wink that left censors scrambling. Harlow's off-screen life mirrored the sass and confidence of her on-screen roles. She swore freely, laughed loudly, and refused to tone herself down to fit the era's ladylike ideals. Though she was often typecast as the provocative blonde, she was known on set as down-to-earth, foul-mouthed, and fiercely funny. Colleagues loved her for her warmth and her lack of pretense. In an era that demanded women be delicate and proper, Jean Harlow stood out by being bold, dirty-humored, and completely herself. Her playful vulgarity wasn't just part of her charm, it was a quiet rebellion wrapped in laughter and lipstick. Patsy Kelly was a firecracker of a character actress whose body humor, brash personality, and unfiltered mouth made her a standout in 1930s and 40s Hollywood. Known for playing wisecracking sidekicks and comic relief roles, Kelly often stole scenes with her rapid-fire delivery and no-nonsense charm. Off-screen, she was just as bold, swearing constantly, telling dirty jokes, and speaking her mind in ways that shocked even her more seasoned colleagues. Openly lesbian within industry circles, a rarity at the time, Patsy lived authentically at a time when most actors were forced to hide their identities. She had long-term relationships with women and never tried to fit Hollywood's mold of the polite, feminine starlet. Her sense of humor was ribald and often delightfully inappropriate, full of sharp one-liners and suggestive remarks that made her a favorite among cast and crew. Despite never achieving leading lady status, Kelly carved out a niche as a lovable, foul-mouthed rebel who didn't care about rules or reputations. Her vulgarity wasn't crude, it was hilarious, fearless, and entirely her own. In a town obsessed with appearances, Patsy Kelly was joyfully, gloriously real.